of you were sitting there going, a neurosurgeon who studies compassion, obviously that's an oxymoron. It's interesting because there's so many problems that are facing our humanity, whether it be global warming, ecological destruction, poverty, gender inequality, and it's obvious that our present paradigm is not working. When Saul asked me to talk, I'll also get back to why a neurosurgeon studies compassion in a minute, but when Saul first asked me to talk, he said, geez, can you talk about something that is not your usual repertoire per se? I said, yeah, okay. And I can tell you that the science of compassion, the knowledge we have today, shows us that when one is compassionate, it has a profound effect on health, wellness, and longevity. In fact, being compassionate has a significant, profound effect on the occurrence of disease, the severity of disease, and the length of disease. But when I was thinking about what to talk about, I recall the conversation I had with the Dalai Lama. And the Dalai Lama and I were chatting, and this, I know that may sound strange too. The Dalai Lama and I were chatting, as the Dalai Lama chats with everyone. And one of the comments he had said was, Western women are going to save humanity. Now, frankly, I didn't really think about it too much. But I was challenged on this recently again, and if any one of you follow Dalai Lama or spend any time with him, he is actually an extraordinarily smart, insightful person, and he doesn't make comments typically that have no relationship to reality. So I spent some time thinking about this. Now, I know the next thing that's going through your head is, how can a man, a white male professional, if you will, from the first world, talk about women's empowerment, women saving humanity, when women's empowerment, gender inequality are certainly their problems in the first world, but they're profound problems in the third world. The other thing, you may have the same derision I felt that when I watched these white, male, conservative Republicans in Congress talk about women's reproductive rights, when it was obvious that they knew little of the topic, much less had an actual understanding of anatomy and physiology. So I can appreciate that you may not quite connect with this. But the reason I hope you connect with this is because I'm going to tell you about my backstory. I grew up in poverty. My father was an alcoholic. My mother was an invalid. Neither of my parents went to college. We were on public assistance my entire life. I had an older sister who, because of a very bright young lady, but because of circumstance and what she felt were limited possibilities, did not live up to her potential and in fact died early. I had a brother, an older brother, who, because of our circumstance, because of his sexuality, did not live up to his potential and also died early of AIDS. I have great personal understanding of the effects of poverty on taking away one's dignity. I have witnessed and experienced what institutional discrimination does to the human spirit, whether it be because of gender issues, sexuality, prejudice against race, different races, cultures, or ethnicity. I know how that creates hopelessness and despair. So I have a personal and close understanding of suffering. I will tell you, though, through that experience, though, I also recognize that I'm a feminist. But more importantly, I'm a humanist, because I believe that every person has the right to dignity, the right to flourish, and the right to thrive. The rest of my backstory is as follows. And the reason I'm here today, because somebody showed compassion to me. When I was 13, I had my own despair and feelings of hopelessness. I felt as if I had no possibilities. And when I was 13, I walked into a magic store. I know that may seem strange. And the owner wasn't there, but his mother was there. And she knew nothing about magic per se, but after talking to her for about a half an hour, she said to me, "You know, I really like you. I'm here for another 6 weeks. If you come every day for the next 6 weeks, I will teach you something." And what she taught me, and I had no insight, I just came because I had nothing else to do. I showed up every day for the next 6 weeks, and she spent about 2 hours a day with me. And during that period of time, she taught me a technique of meditation or mind training. She taught me a technique of visualization and the power of positive thinking. And that intersection with her profoundly changed my life, because what it did was it took me from a position of hopelessness and despair to one of limited possibilities to one of unlimited possibilities. It allowed me to go to medical school, become a neurosurgeon, become a successful entrepreneur and CEO of a company that went public for $1.3 billion, and also to found the center at Stanford, of which the Dalai Lama is the founding benefactor. Everyone in this room is, will suffer in their lives. And in fact, some of our speakers have already talked about profound suffering they've had in their own lives. It is our lot as humans to suffer. But it is also our lot to care, to nurture, and to soothe, to recognize the suffering of another and to intervene. When we think of our evolution, to have what is called theory of mind, to have abstract thinking, to have complex language required a significant increase in the size of our cortex. As a result of that decreased our litter size, increased the gestational period, and also created this requirement that our litter require being cared for well over a decade after birth. And in fact, in my own case, for apparently 3 decades after birth. But the other thing that happened is, because caring for this child who desperately needed it resulted in the development of incredibly strong nurturing and bonding mechanisms. And that is the source of our socialization as human beings. The other interesting thing is, it was also at this time where traditional gender roles were created. This is the time frame in which women became caregivers and men became protectors and providers. And in fact, some people have argued that the survival of Homo sapiens was directly related to this, while the extinction of Neanderthal was related to the fact that that did not occur. As our species went to its next evolution, which was from the nuclear family, if you will, to hunter-gatherers, which was our primary survival strategy until 10,000 years ago. Imagine that. Until 10,000 years ago, our primary survival strategy was as hunter-gatherers in groups of 10 to 50. Because it was a harsh environment, these mechanisms that created socialization, connection with other people, which were critically important if you were to survive, they also define what we call in and out groups. These same social bonds are also what ultimately resulted in the development of culture, society, and religion, to respond to the unknown, to respond to perceived or real threat, to act as cohesion. And this paradigm has worked until the last several hundred years. But what's interesting is that it is not a sustainable paradigm. But what happens, though, is that if you look at change in culture and society, change does not happen in a generation, it does not happen in 2 generations, it does not happen in 3 generations. So what are we to do? Over the last 3 decades, neuroscientists have learned a great deal about the brain in conjunction with our colleagues in psychology, evolutionary biology, and realized that when somebody is authentic, when somebody is who they really are, when they connect with social people, and we've talked about this some with other speakers, that is when they are at their best, that is when they thrive, and they get every benefit of this evolutionary pathway that was developed in the earliest of times of our species. In fact, we know that when one is compassionate, and we can teach compassion actually, that markers of inflammation and stress decrease, your immune system is boosted, those areas in your brain associated with pleasure and reward are activated. Being compassionate reinforces being compassionate. Observing somebody being compassionate actually results in other people being, or when you see somebody, I should say, being compassionate, it actually results in you wanting to be compassionate. This is a very profound, deep part of our humanity, which has been distorted by the way in which we live our modern lives with immense distractions, with ever-expanding perceptions of in and out groups. What's interesting, though, is that over the last 4 or 5 decades, women have demanded a different role than their traditional role in society. And what is less talked about is the fact that men have now also demanded a different role in society. And we're seeing this change slowly happen, especially in the West. When one steps out of what society, culture has defined as the normal paradigm, what it does is it unleashes us to be who we are and therefore flourish and thrive. So when the Dalai Lama said, "It is Western women who will save humanity," I tell you, it is women who will save humanity. Because as women go into these new roles where we see the expansion of gender equality and empowerment, what it does, it allows men to flourish as well. And fundamentally, I will tell you, that is this reality, it is this potential that is going to save our species. I would like to close by telling you a poem that has been modified a little bit from its original content, but it was written by a woman who was a feminist in 1973 by the name of Nancy Smith. And it goes, "For every girl who acted weak when she was strong, there is a boy who appeared strong when he felt vulnerable. For every boy who felt the burden of constantly knowing everything, there is a girl who is tired of having people not accepting her intelligence. For every girl who has been told that she is oversensitive, there is a boy who fears showing his emotions or crying. For every boy who feels the need to show his masculinity through competition, there's a girl that is tired of being called unfeminine because she is a woman and wishes to compete. And for every girl who has taken the first steps toward liberation, there is a boy who sees his own freedom to go his own path. Thank you.